please speak from your seat and use the microphone on the panel. The time allotted will depend on the number of speakers asking to take the floor, and I will tell you the time at the beginning of each session, but I must tell you it will be quite short. Unless you have asked to take the floor during registration, you still have the opportunity to ask to take the floor using the color cards on your panel. Please do not bring any snacks or drinks into the room. Coffee and snacks are available outside throughout the meeting. May I now extend a very warm welcome to our guests who will speak here today. The Speaker of the Polish Senate, Ms. Małgorzata Kidawa-Błońska. Polish Minister for European Union, Mr. Adam Szłapka, who will... Oh yes, he is in the room. A warm welcome to Mr. Janusz Lewandowski, who is Vice Chair of the Committee for Budgets of the European Parliament and former Commissioner for Budget and Financial Programming in 2010-2014. He will speak in the second session today. According to good custom, let me extend my thanks to the members of the delegations here for the first time. Peter Haubner of the Austrian Parliament, Ms. Jelena Milos of the Croatian Parliament, Ms. Rasa Budbergyte of the Lithuanian Parliament, and Ms. Caroline van der Plas of the Netherlands Parliament, and Mr. Dimitar Kardev of the Bulgarian Parliament. And now, I'd like to turn the floor to the Speaker, Małgorzata Kidawa-Błońska, to take the floor.
Szanowni Państwo.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor for me to extend words of welcome to you at the Senate in Warsaw, the capital city of Poland, at the heart of Europe, where this meeting of the chairpersons of COSAC opens the parliamentary dimension of the Polish presidency in the Council of the European Union. Recently in Strasbourg, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk stressed that Europe was, is, and will remain great. Everybody who knows history must agree. It is our great privilege that we live in a world of democracy and rule of law, where the will of the citizens decides our future. As parliamentarians, we have special responsibility for the future of Europe. What we do today is talk to citizens. It is our responsibility to listen to their needs and their concerns, but also to present bold projects which set out the future for European politics. During the geopolitical storm, the role of European cooperation is particularly important. Faced with global powers, Europe may be effective only when it speaks a single voice. Only then will it be able to present its interest in a solidary way. Agency is the most important currency in politics. We are here today in parliaments because we have convinced our voters that we will effectively represent their interests, and we know how to lead Europe to a great future. Today's world, and unfortunately today's Europe, have become a place fraught with danger. Our citizens expect us to take bold action in favor of security. The period of peace has come to an end. We have to be ready with our defense industries and our military to be so strong that nobody thinks about attacking Europe. But no country can do it alone. We have to do it together. Europe must act together. Security has many dimensions. It is particularly relevant to think of economic security today. For centuries, we have been in the lead with competition and innovation. Today, we have to be even more effective, innovative, and educated. Our single market remains one of the biggest economies around the world, and we have all tools in hand to make the 21st century a century of a strong Europe. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure that the Polish presidency in the Council of the European Union will support the development of our shared European dreams. The common denominator of the sector priorities of the Polish presidency is security, protecting people and borders, resilience to foreign interference and disinformation, ensuring security and economic freedom, defense, energy transition, competitive and resilient agriculture, and health security, of course. Security also means supporting EU's resilience to natural disasters. Hence, the second session today is dedicated to preventing climate change from the perspective of the EU budget. Extreme weather events and climate change pose a threat to people's lives, while also significantly infringing on regional economic ecosystems, which is why it is so important to increase our spending to prevent the negative impact of climate change. The Polish presidency coincides with the beginning of a new institutional cycle of the European Union. This gives us an opportunity to discuss our priorities in combination with the new priorities of the European Commission and the European Parliament. This will be a huge challenge, especially when negotiating the multi-annual financial framework. And I'm certain that Janusz Lewandowski, Vice Chair of the Committee on Budgets of the European Parliament, former Commissioner for Budget and Financial Programming, will present proposals that will open up a fruitful debate on European finance. Dear colleagues, parliamentarians, to conclude, let me say it once again. We have no time to be weak or lack agency. We are faced with a double challenge. We have to address the global turbulence and find support of our voters for the bold plan to build a secure Europe. This is the only way we can protect European greatness. This is our shared responsibility. I wish you a fruitful debate and inspiring discussions today. Have a nice stay in Warsaw. Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo, pani marszałek.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Let's move on to the procedural item on the agenda. The first item on the agenda is to adopt the agenda. The draft agenda has been consulted in the Troika, and the final draft has been distributed to all delegations on the 10th of January 2025. The agenda has been published on IPEX. As we've heard, in the first session, the presentation of the priorities of the Polish presidency in the EU Council will be presented by Mr. Adam Szłapka, Minister for European Affairs. Then we will have time for questions and comments. After a coffee break, we will open session 2 to discuss a policy-based budget of the EU responsibly tackling the consequences of climate change. The keynote speaker is Janusz Lewandowski, current Vice Chair of the Committee on Budgets of the European Parliament, former Commissioner for Budget and Financial Programming in 2010-2014. We will then close the meeting with conclusions and final comments. Are there any comments, questions or suggestions for the agenda? If not, let's approve the agenda.
Dziękuję. Program.
Thank you. The agenda for the meeting is approved. Ladies and gentlemen, Madam Speaker has other pressing appointments and she will have to leave. So let me thank Madam Speaker once again for opening this meeting of the chairpersons of COSAC.
Chciałbym Państwa poinformować.
May I say the following. The COSAC Presidency Troika met yesterday and approved the draft agenda for this meeting, the outline of the 43rd biannual report of COSAC, and discussed the draft program for the 73rd plenary meeting of COSAC. Let me now briefly outline the draft agenda of the 73rd meeting, the plenary meeting of COSAC, to be held between the 8th and the 10th of June 2025 in Warsaw. The draft agenda has been consulted in the Troika and then distributed to all delegations on the 10th of January 2025. The agenda has been published on IPEX. At this point, I'd like to turn the floor over to Agnieszka Pomaska.
Bardzo dziękuję, panie przewodniczący.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Very good morning to all of you. I very much hope you had a lovely evening. Last night you enjoyed the concert and the dinner. Thank you for your participation. Now, the agenda for 73rd plenary session of COSAC, there are 5 sessions envisaged. Session 1, implementation of the Polish presidency priorities in the EU. Keynote speaker, Mr. Donald Tusk. Session 2, the work programme of the European Commission and European Parliament in the new institutional cycle, strategic agenda of the EU, and here keynote speakers are expected to be Mr. Maroš, who is Commissioner for Trade and Economic Security, as well as Interinstitutional Relations and Transparency, as well as the representative of the European Parliament. Session 3, new multi-annual financial framework, new challenges in the EU. And here key speakers are Mr. Tomasz Łapka, Minister for European Union, Mr. Andrzej Domański, Minister of Finance, and Mr. Piotr Serafin, who is Commissioner for Budget, Public Administration and Combating Fraud. Session 4, Enlargement Policy of the EU, keynote speaker, Mr. Radosław Sikorski, Foreign Affairs Minister, and Madam Marta Kos, Commissioner for Enlargement. Session 5, reinforcing collective effort of the EU to improve cyber resilience and combat disinformation. And here our keynote speakers will be Mr. Krzysztof Gawkowski, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Digitization, and a representative from the European External Service. Well, because the 73rd session will take place in June, we cannot yet confirm all the invitees, but we very much hope that our invitation will be accepted by all the prospective keynote speakers. We will let you know. On the 9th of June, there will be chairs meeting where the conclusions will be discussed to be later adopted by the plenary session at the end of the proceedings. And the proceedings will take place in the plenary hall of the House of Sejm here. Thank you very much. We are now moving on to a next item where I would like to tell you about the first annual report on the activities of COSAC Secretariat posted on IPEX. This is a shared initiative by the permanent member of Secretariat and the Polish Presidency. The report is authored by Mr. Jakub Szwewal. The report is expected to increase transparency and knowledge on the work of the COSAC Secretariat. The last time this formal report was presented was back in 2005, quite a while ago. Since then, the nature of work of the Secretariat has changed significantly, and starting this year, the report will be published each year in January and will be posted on IPEX. Thank you, Mr. Jakub Chwewal, for developing this document. Allow me to discuss briefly the outline of the 43rd biannual COSAC report, which has been discussed under Troika and passed on to the delegations on January the 10th. It was also posted on IPEX. Now, it subdivides into 3 chapters, which correspond to the items on the plenary agenda. 1, the program of work of the European Commission and European Parliament and the new institutional cycle, strategic agenda of the EU. 2, multi-annual financial framework. 3, reinforcing collective effort of the EU to improve cyber resilience and combating disinformation. Now, there is a questionnaire prepared for each of these items, and based on the responses, the Secretariat will prepare the 43rd biannual COSAC report, whose outcome will be presented by the permanent representative of the Secretariat during the plenary session in June. The questionnaire will be sent over to Parliament on February the 4th. And may I please ask you to send back your responses to COSAC Secretariat. We suggest that the response should have been sent back to the Secretariat by March the 17th. Would anyone like to speak on this particular item of the agenda? If this is not the case, I suggest we adopt this item. Thank you. The document has just been adopted. Let me also tell the COSAC delegates that the Presidency received 4 letters requesting participation in this meeting from the Parliaments of Norway, Switzerland, Kosovo and the British House of Lords. In consultation with Troika, we made such participation possible to all delegations present. We also received a letter from the head of the European Integration Committee of the Georgian Parliament in response to the letter that myself and Madam Pomaska sent, expressing our concern with the ongoing situation in that country and de facto calling off our invitation to the Georgian participation to take part in the Chair's COSAC meeting. This letter was discussed by the Troika as well. Now, miscellaneous or any other business, that's the next item. Please note that there is a procedure of co-financing of the permanent member of the COSAC Secretariat. End of this year, our agreement on co-funding permanent members coming to an end in the years 2024-2025. Therefore, we would like to suggest that another letter of intent be signed in which Parliaments commit to co-fund the position of the permanent member of COSAC Secretariat between 2026 and 2027. A letter on this we would like to be sent immediately after Chair's meeting and ask you to send it back by May the 12th, whereby the Parliaments undertake to cover part of the expenses. The content of the letter of intent will be identical with the previous letters of this kind. Would anyone like to speak on this item? Thank you. We have thus exhausted the procedural considerations, and we are ready to move on to the first substantive part, which is the priorities of the Polish Presidency and the EU Council. I give the floor to the Minister for European Affairs, Mr. Adam Szłapka. I hand over to you, Minister.
Bardzo dziękuję Pani Przewodnicząca, Panie Przewodniczący, Szanowni.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. This is indeed a great honor for me to welcome you in Warsaw at the very outset of the Polish presidency, the representatives of so many parliaments. You as parliamentarians carry a direct mandate from your respective societies, which is extremely important in this place, because this chamber is the first which saw a fully independent election after the collapse of the communist system, which is extremely important. Before I talk you through the priorities of the Polish presidency, allow me to share a handful of personal comments. 21 years ago, on the 1st of May 2004, Poland and 9 other states joined the EU. I remember that day very clearly, and I'm sure the Polish members of this chamber have equally vivid memories. I remember that day as a day of joy, as jubilation, spontaneously in the streets. It was the fulfillment of our dreams, of many generations of Poles. Now, that was back in 2004, when things were different than they are now, and thinking about the future was only joyful and filled with optimism. Then, now, when Poland assumes her second presidency in the EU, we no longer talk about old and new members, but we are now facing a number of challenges, quite dangerous challenges in the world at large, but also the EU internal discussion, the skepticism that can be sensed, the challenging of the rationality of the project makes me try and remind ourselves of why the EU was put in place in the first place. It was put in place as the project of peace, to bring peace and stability after the trauma of 2 wars. And this is indeed what has happened, together with an unprecedented economic growth to the whole continent, to millions of Europeans. We Europeans lay down reality which came as a fulfillment of the dreams of millions of Europeans. And I remember 10 years after our accession to the EU, when I went to the Maidan, where the dignity revolution was in progress. I remember thousands of Ukrainians clustering around the European flag, which symbolized their dreams. And now the Georgians and their dream about Europe, because this is a true dream for the Georgians, Europe. This is our daily bread, so to speak. We do not really think about it. We do not think much about air, but we breathe it constantly. And obviously you cannot survive without oxygen. But the reality which we have built in Europe is not given once and for all. It needs to be supported. We need to be committed to it. Therefore, without shying away from big words, we decided as Polish presidency to adopt the motto of security in Europe. This is exactly what we need to provide for. Europe, that was a dream for millions of Europeans to be peaceful forever. Let me now comment on the priorities of the Polish presidency. Security is very important, of course, but it's a broad notion. External security. There will be no secure Europe without our active engagement. Number two, boosting our defense capacity and industry, but also support to be given to Ukraine and building our neighborhood and enlargement. Secondly, internal security, effective combating hybrid challenges, reinforcement of our external borders against illegal migration, joint action against natural disasters, which we have been troubled by in Europe recently, and information security as well. As representatives of parliaments, I do not really need to convince you that we have been dealing with a huge wave of disinformation practically every day, which is an important part of our security. We are ready to take joint action with respect to the Democratic Shield project as presented by the Commission. Fourthly, we will not be able to provide for our security if we fail to be competitive. And therefore, we need to correct our thinking about the economy. We need more flexibility in the implementation of the energy and the climate policy. We need to home in on supporting European competitiveness. We must go away from excessive regulation or over-regulation.
We have to encourage European capital to invest in Europe. Europe is 450 million people, one of the biggest markets around the world. We can afford to be competitive. Number 5, energy security. Europe must be fully independent of dangerous energy suppliers, and I'm thinking of Russia. We must develop a policy to ensure that energy in Europe is cheaper and affordable. This is part of our competitive edge. 6, food security. In today's world, on the one hand, we have to be competitive with our agriculture for economic reasons, but agriculture must also be one of the pillars of our sovereignty. So a strong agricultural policy must be one of our priorities. 7, health security. After the pandemic, nobody must be told that this should be a priority, but we have to think about it in terms of our autonomy or sovereignty when it comes to chains of supply of drugs or active ingredients, as well as other important factors, for instance, common action to ensure a good mental health of our youngsters. Ladies and gentlemen, we elected parliamentarians have a big responsibility. We are in day-to-day communication with the voters, and we can shape public debate in Poland, in Europe, and around the EU. We must realize that we have created a wonderful project, a dream for millions of people and many generations, and we have to take responsibility for strengthening the project and making it better. The Polish presidency is ready to make Europe strong and ready for action, and I'm sure we can act together to make Europe strong and ready for action. Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo, panie ministrze.
Thank you very much, Minister. I open the floor for debate. In the first session, we have 40 speakers asking for the floor. You will speak from your seats. Please press the button to activate the microphone on your panel in the order put on the screen. Every speaker has 90 seconds, 1.5 minutes to speak. The time will be running on the side screens. And you will see when your time is up. 1.5 minutes. Please do not exceed the allotted time slot, because that would interfere with our agenda, and we have another session to continue with. The first speaker is Henrik Møller, Denmark.
No? Thank you, Henrik. Okay, so we save 1.5 minutes. Yeah? Good. Jako drugi
The next speaker, traditionally the Troika speaks first, so now Zoltán Tesely of Hungary. Please, the floor is yours. Minister, Presidency, colleagues. Just like 13 years ago, this year we were happy to hand over the presidency of the Council of the European Union to Poland to continue the EU policy based on the achievements of the Hungarian presidency. The outcomes of our presidency include the addition of 2 new members to the Schengen zone. In competition, we have the Budapest Declaration, which sets out priorities for EU institutions to restore competitiveness in Europe in the next 6 months. During the Hungarian presidency, we tried to overcome the fatigue with the enlargement of the past decades, and we've made progress in enlargement policy with respect to Albania, Montenegro and Serbia. The best prepared candidate countries have given us new faith as regards their integration, and it seems that the completion of the accession negotiations in this institutional cycle is feasible. In the Polish presidency, security is the primary objective and the approach to be taken with respect to all key policies. This approach gives us hope, and we acknowledge it fully. The position of Hungary in security is clear. We are in favor of peace, family. We are against migration. So in this institutional cycle, together with the new US administration, we have to create a framework for close cooperation. I wish you every success in this endeavor. Thank you. Thank you very much, Chairman Tesely. The next speaker is Esteban González Pons of the European Parliament. The floor is yours.
Dear President Godnik, dear Adams Black, Minister, thank you for your very inspiring speech. Today, Europeans are under several threats, so that's the reason why I think that it's an answer to the motto Security Europe that the Presidency of Poland has decided. Threats come from external military force, which is the case in Ukraine, hybrid threats as well that challenge our security, such as attacks to our critical infrastructure, threats coming from outside the continent and from those inside working to undermine the European project. As I said in Budapest, preparedness will be one of the most important words in the political debate. We have to be prepared with NATO, but not only with NATO. Last week, Prime Minister Tusk addressed the European Parliament in Strasbourg. His message was clear. Despite the challenges, we should remember Europe's greatness, stay away from feelings of defeat, and take the responsibility of defending Europe with our own hands. Something similar I heard yesterday from President Gotnik. I can only subscribe his message. We need to work together. We have no alternative. I wish the Polish presidency the greatness, success, and express European Parliament support to ensure it.
Thank you very much. You were very precise, staying within the frame of time. Następna głos za...
The next speaker is Senator Gabriela Morawska-Stanecka from Poland. Thank you very much, co-chairs. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the key priorities of Poland during the presidency is to build resilience to interference from abroad and disinformation in cyberspace. This is one of the biggest challenges currently faced by the EU as an organization that respects the fundamental rights, the democratic state ruled by law. And given what happened in Romania and what currently happens during the German election, it is a top priority. We must go beyond reinforcing the technicalities of cybersecurity. Although it will not be easy, Europe has to develop tools to prevent manipulation and disinformation around the world and in the internet. We have new tools like the Digital Services Act, which support our rights as civil society and users of the internet. We have to now implement these regulations effectively and ensure that bans on manipulative interfaces in applications and on websites and the requirements to disclose algorithms, especially those that provide content, are enforced and are not just on paper. According to research, if a person who is being manipulated knows about it, the impact of that manipulation is weakened. No action will be effective if it is taken by individual member states. We need to act together in a coordinated manner. We need support from the European institutions. What is key is the role of the European Commission, but the member states under Poland's leadership should support the Commission. Thank you very much, Senator. The next speaker is Mr. Giulio Terzi di Sant'Agata, Italy. Thank you, Chair. I would like to stress most emphatically and support what the Minister said, the importance of security for Europe. It's a commitment for today. Today is the day of combating anti-Semitism that is quite contemporary, fighting whatever undermines democratic values of the Western world. We must combat disinformation. We have to fight whatever disrupts the enlargement process, disinformation about Ukraine, disinformation about Georgia and other elections also in the member states. Security in Europe is mainly about defense, the defense industry and the development of integrated programs to go beyond the restrictions of the Stability Pact and the strong restrictions that are involved. We have to invest together in the defense industry. This is a magnificent project related not only to security, but also the values and principles that are the foundation of our union. We have to be consistent about our values, cohesive political future. Thank you. Thank you very much. The next speaker is Erik Ottosson, Sweden.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the Polish Minister and the Presidency for inspiring priorities. Leadership is something that is important for the European Union at this time. We are looking for leadership, and we can see that in the Polish Presidency in a way that hasn't been seen in quite some time. We are under some attack, so to speak, and the psychological defense of the European Union in this era will be the most important task we can take. It's important not only for the preservation of security, but also for the strength of our democracy long term. We can see an attack being pointed towards the freedom of our democracy through our democracy. And that is something we look to the Polish presidency for leadership on, and I am quite sure that this will also be provided. We in the Swedish Parliament look forward to these 6 months of the Polish presidency, and we also have welcomed the priorities made by the Polish presidency. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is następnym mówcą jest pan
Mr. Peter de Rover, Belgium.
Thank you, dear colleagues. Thank you, Polish colleagues, for the reception and the inspiring elements that you brought. I would like to stress on only one thing because of lack of time to go further, and that is the fight against disinformation. I think it's very important, and it's an issue that all of us have to cope with, although we must agree that disinformation and trying to convince people with false arguments is something that is as old as politics, and so it's not a new challenge. I want to have your attention of a certain danger that comes with fighting against disinformation. That is the idea that we, not as politicians, we all have ideas, but that as a government, that we own the truth. And so I think that we must be aware that building up some sort of, let's say, ministry of truth can never be a solution. That is always the problem itself. Thank you very much.
Dziękuję bardzo. Jako następny będzie...
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Monsieur Pierre-Alexandre Anglade from France. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to thank the Polish presidency for having us. I'm delighted to be able to be in Warsaw today at this important meeting. It is important because, as we all know, Europe faces major challenges. Russia may not limit itself to Ukraine. They may want to home in on the entire Europe. Then China, Azerbaijan is running destabilizing operation, but also our overseas territories of France see instability as well. Well, it seems that a lot of focus is given to the U.S. economy and the U.S.'s potential conflict with China. So either we agree to work on a shared strategy for Europe to be more sovereign and become a superpower, climatic, energy, economic, military, or we are going to follow suit of the major empires who believe in the law of the stronger party. We must accelerate our defense activities. We must build European defense industry ourselves and not source it out. Thank you very much. And the Polish presidency is fully determined to attain the objective of building great Europe. Mr. Bastian Appeldoorn from the Netherlands.
And this is understandable given the world we live in, with a war of aggression fought on our doorstep. One of the threats identified by Poland, other colleagues also referred to this already, is that of disinformation campaigns and outside interference with our domestic politics, including elections. This threat, however, no longer appears just to come from Russia, for instance, but also from the other side of the ocean. There's in particular a growing fear of the power of what former President Joe Biden called the new tech oligarchy, and in particular number one oligarch, Elon Musk, and his megaphone called X. I've heard, not sure it's true, but there's fear that Musk and maybe Trump himself might also try to influence the upcoming presidential elections in Poland. In the European Parliament, there have been calls for a strict enforcement of the EU Digital Services Act, but the worry is that we might not strictly enforce this act. We might lack the unity or political will to do so. And maybe, some suggest, we also need more effective instruments for Europe to become more resilient in this respect. So my question also to the Minister is, to what extent these concerns are also reflected in the priorities of the Polish presidency, and if so, how this will shape the agenda for the next months. Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo za ten głos. Pan minister będzie.
Thank you very much for this contribution. Mr. Minister will take the questions at the end of the round of questions. Monsieur Francisco Jasaconda from Spain, please. Good morning to all of you. Thank you, Minister, for your presentation and for including amongst the priorities security, which links us all together. Europe needs to be stronger to secure peace. For this reason, we all need to make this effort of seeking solutions, seeking answers to the frustration of our citizenry in the context of uncertainty, which seems to be overwhelming them. We need to take effective steps here. Just two items I want to draw your attention to. Firstly, our economic capacity, our economic strength, not only in terms of transatlantic relations, but also consolidating our internal strength, reducing the red tape, which is a major burden to the business operators, and competitiveness. We must shun the ideological considerations and make sure that the industry, production industry in particular, is competitive. Another item is limiting illegal migration into Europe. And we need to be very determined about that. We need to be able to combat organized groups engaged in trafficking of human beings. This should also be one of the priorities. Thank you. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Madam Rasa Budbergita from Lithuania.
Congratulate Poland with the ambitious program of your presidency and express full support from our side for the security priorities. Let me stress that the future and security of EU is still being decided in Ukraine. Therefore, supporting Ukraine must remain on the top of EU priorities. We are especially waiting for the white paper on the future of European defense. We need more European investment and more defense spending to increase EU-NATO cooperation. We would encourage your presidency to make efforts towards strengthening our critical underwater infrastructure in the Baltic Sea and increase pressure on Russia's shadow fleet, including expanded sanctions to address safety threats. As regards competitiveness, we need a well-functioning, integrated single market. We also strongly advocate for savings and investments union. During Polish presidency, we also expect further progress in boosting efforts to reduce irregular migration, strengthening the protection of external borders and ensuring an effective response to instrumentalized migration. Finally, I would like also to congratulate Denmark and Cyprus for starting a new trio presidency together with Poland. We will follow you by our trio, and I am sure that we are in very good hands. Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Mr. Anton Hofreiter from Germany.
Thanks a lot for the priorities of the Polish presidency. I'm really happy that we have now the Polish presidency, and I'm really happy that you put security as one of the most important issues. And I agree with Lithuania said the case of Ukraine and that we should support Ukraine much more is important for the security of whole of Europe. And so I also think we have to talk about very complicated issues. It's just some weeks ago, the last time I have been in Brussels, and there people told me, the representatives in Brussels, that we have a big problem because Hungary is blockading a lot of important decisions for the security of Europe, for the support of Ukraine, and we have, I think, to talk how to overcome the blockade which is used by Hungary, which is helping in the end Putin, and which is a problem for all of us. I think we have to discuss it. I think we also have to discuss how to find the money we need to invest in our security. I'm in favor that we have Euro bonds for 500 billion European Security Fund, that we are really able to invest in our security. And thanks a lot for your priorities. And I wish you luck that you really can implement it.
Dziękuję bardzo. Chciałem też podziękować panu.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Hofreiter, who Mr. Hofreiter initiated a few days ago a meeting of the Baltic states dedicated to the shadow fleet of Russian obsolete and dangerous tankers. That was a very important meeting for the Baltic area. Mr. Bojan Kekec from Slovenia, please.
First of all, I would like to congratulate our colleagues from Poland on their second presidency of the Council of the European Union. The slogan, Security Europe, is very relevant in the times we are in. We know that security is the key element that preserves countries, communities, and the entire civilization. The 7 priorities that you have chosen and will guide us through this presidency also address the important challenges that we face. Security, maximum autonomy, and the self-sufficiency in all areas are among the most important issues in the long term. The European budget will need more money in the coming years. At the same time, the competitiveness of EU economy is declining, and we are also lagging far behind the rest of the developed world in the field of innovation. Knowledge, new investment, and innovations are what can make a new development breaking for the EU. We can also be concerned that not a single one of the 25 best universities in the world is from the EU 27. The paradigm of the sustainable development which we face in all areas is important, but it works well when the components of the economy, environment policy, and the social policy are balanced. In recent years, however, the economic components has been significantly subordinated to the other two. Therefore, reforms of existing policies will be necessary to meaningfully balance all 3 indicators. Thank you very much.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker comes from Finland, Mr. Heikki Autto, please.
I thank the Polish presidency for bringing the building Europe security on the top of the agenda of your presidency. Thank you very much for that. Russia continues its brutal war. The fighting, the horrific cruelties and the war crimes take place in Ukraine, but the attack is against all of us. Ukrainians are fighting for all of us. That's why it's unacceptable that we don't do more to support Ukraine. Russia alone is to blame for the war, but we are all to blame that we let Russia to continue the war. Russia's hybrid war has recently taken very concrete shapes in the Baltic Sea, where Russia's shadow fleet destroys the critical underwater infrastructure like the internet and electricity cables and gas pipes. The shadow fleet causes also an imminent threat and severe threat to the maritime safety and the nature. More time we give Russia to escalate the war this way, more dangerous the situation becomes for all of us. That's why I strongly urge us all to act to support Ukraine, which is the only way to stop the Russian aggression against all of us and bring back peace to our continent.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Madam Morga Gabriela from Romania.
By the Polish presidency in the Council of the EU, especially in the current context marked by multiple changes at both European and international level. It is now more important than ever that Europe remains united and strong. On the 7 priorities of the Polish presidency, I would like to underline the importance of the priority of ensuring business security and freedom. In this regard, I would like to stress the importance of strengthening the EU competitiveness through measures to deepen the single market, remove barriers to cross-border economic cooperation, especially in the service sector, and improve access to private and equity capital for companies wishing to grow. This is a great support for Romanian institution level as well for the implementation of the solution identified in the Letta and Draghi report on strengthening the internal market as a main driver for increasing the competitiveness of the European economy. I therefore appreciate the need to reduce administrative burdens in relation to companies, SMEs, including public authorities, by simplifying legislation and avoiding over-regulation. Effective regulation can contribute significantly to reducing administrative costs, stimulating innovation, and increasing competitiveness in the European single market. In line with this recommendation contained in the Draghi report, I support initiatives validated by the business environment and cooperation. Competition and innovation needs in EU better financing and better regulations for investment funds, private equity, and venture capital. These are essential for financing companies, and also addressing the union of European capital market is very important as well. This is what differentiates us from other economies and from those that grow. Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Ms. Jelena Miloš, Croatia.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, I would like to commend the Polish presidency for their priorities, particularly the focus on strengthening resilience to foreign interference and disinformation. I believe this is a critical component of security that aligns closely with the challenges of our current political moment. Over the years, we have regrettably seen and condemned third countries, especially Russia, trying to influence European elections. Unfortunately, this trend appears to be expanding in scope, especially and even across the ocean. I must express concern regarding the potential influence of high-profile and powerful individuals, such as Elon Musk, trying to influence on political processes in the EU through their social media platforms. I believe we must never remain silent when it comes to denouncing such acts as unacceptable, because they pose a threat to our democracies and to our shared values. This also means that we need to intensify our efforts to combat disinformation and to mitigate potential interference in European elections. We need to have strict regulation of social media platforms, ensuring greater transparency of algorithms, and holding social media owners more accountable for the content on their platforms. Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo. W tej chwili poproszę o głos pana Petera Haubnera z Austrii.
Mr. Peter Haubner, Austria.
Let me briefly touch on a few dimensions of the Polish presidency. The focus on the security and freedom of business is to be welcomed. It's highly important to strengthen European competitiveness. The proposals announced by the European Commission, such as the Competitiveness Compass, will be of great interest. In my view, the reduction of administrative burden on businesses and support measures for SMEs are particularly important. important. I also welcome the fact that resistance for foreign interferences and disinformation is a prominent priority for the Presidency. This is a key issue for the protection of our liberal democracies, which are threatened by polarization and radicalization. Democracy education is an important aspect of this. The Austrian Parliament, for example, offers various democracy education programs for interest parties of all age groups. On today's 80th anniversary of the liberation of the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp, let me also express our clear commitment to combating anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is profoundly anti-democratic. Parliaments therefore have a special responsibility to act against disinformation and rising anti-Semitism. It's also important that the protection of people and borders is high on the agenda. With the adoption of the Pact of Migration and Asylum, we have taken an important step towards effective and fair migration management. It is now important to quickly implement the new provisions in order to maintain the EU credibility and ability to solve problems in the field of migration. Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Janusz Lewandowski, European Parliament.
Thank you. I am for the next panel for very shortly on Polish presidency. A very warm welcome to Donald Tusk in the Strasbourg plenary, indicating high expectations. By the way, after 20 years of his presence internationally, he still pronounced Donald Tusk. And I should remind you that Musk is Musk, Tusk is Tusk. But really, I think the security as our choice is good choice. This is the most desired gift we can offer to our citizens now with war back on our continent and unpredictable President Trump across Atlantic. But here is a problem already mentioned. We have first ever Commissioner for Defense. However, he is without money. And Polish member of his cabinet has been entrusted with the hopeless goal, mission impossible, to find money now. But this is a real goal for the next multi-annual framework. The only question asked about Polish presidency in couloir of Brussels is whether this is not going to be hostage of our presidential elections. But I'm sure we are to defend democracy in our presidential elections, and we are to lead properly Europe until June. Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo
Thank you very much for this intriguing intervention. And the next speaker is Jean-François Rapin of France. Co-chairs. Poland is now presidency of the Council of the European Union. At the beginning of the new institutional cycle in the EU, after Trump has taken power with territorial claims, economic threats, and a difficult situation in Ukraine. We need to prevent and defend ourselves against anyone who undermines the transatlantic unity. We must not remain silent. But the Union was silent in the face of unacceptable attacks by Elon Musk, the lack of solidarity with Denmark. I'm very glad that the Polish presidency has security as its motto, security of Europe in all dimensions and in all areas. It is important for Europe to remain autonomous, for instance, in defense. We must not depend on countries like the US in defense. We must be autonomous also with regard to supplies of natural gas from the US. We must stand united in face of the acts committed by Russia, in face of the approach by China. We must be united in supporting Ukraine. We must be united in supporting competitiveness and also renewable energy sources, including nuclear power. Thank you very much. Chairman, the key operative word is unity of the Union. If we stand united, nobody can overcome us. The next speaker is Haris Georgiades of Cyprus. The floor is yours.
Indeed, we must stay united, and let me say that the Minister has provided a very effective overview of the priorities, with which I can say that I fully agree. The combination of security and competitiveness is what we need, and as a member of the incoming trio, I hope that we shall be able to promote this agenda. Let me also express my sympathy to Denmark, the other member of the trio, for its recent challenges from across the Atlantic. I could say that we should keep calm and carry on, but we cannot exactly carry on as usual. We should get our act together. On the economy, 15 years ago, we were neck and neck with the US by size of our combined GDP. Now we are lagging. Something has gone wrong. Excessive taxation and regulation will not work. And on security, we must invest more. Poland is showing the way. This is what we should do, and we should combine this effort with a much more effective foreign policy, including neighborhood policy and enlargement policy, which should be based on the principle of conditionality. Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Jan Ferenczak, Slovakia.
I'm personally delighted that the Republic of Poland, a country with a rich history and strong ties to Slovak Republic, has assumed the responsibility of leading the European Union in this turbulent period. Security, as defined in the program of the Polish Presidency of the Council of the European Union, is crucial for our common future, given the current challenges we face within the European Union. Personally, I particularly appreciate the Republic of Poland's emphasis on the enlargement of the European Union, which is based on the principles of merit. We support an enlargement process based precisely on the principles of merit. The process must be based on clearly defined technical criteria and on careful consideration of the geopolitical and strategic implications. The Polish Presidency of the Council is an opportunity for our Union to demonstrate its unity, strength, and strategic autonomy. I believe that together, and in the interest of our citizens, we will be able to overcome the current challenges and build a stronger, more resilient, more united, and above all, more secure Europe. Thank you for your attention.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Telmo Faria, Portugal.
And colleagues, I'd like to congratulate Poland for this presidency and thanks for the welcoming. You have, let me say, a unique and historical opportunity to redefine the European path. We are at the beginning of an institutional cycle inside the EU, and with new changes in the international order, and you are at the border of Ukraine. The redefinition of EU policies like the defense priority, green transition, economic and technological competitiveness, and the support to European enlargement as a way to protect the continent and expand the European market and borders bring us also new challenges. And one of them is the new budget and the need of finding the creative and original mix of sourcing the European budget. In times of reforms, we need to keep the cohesion policy, fight the European asymmetries, and the Polish presidency have the opportunity to influence the Commission on this on the next month. What the Polish presidency think about this issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Vincent Blondel of Belgium. The floor is yours. Madam Co-Chair, Mr. Co-Chair, Minister, thank you very much for providing an outline of the main priorities of the Polish presidency. I'm very happy to see that security is included in many dimensions as a combination of external, internal, economic, IT, energy, health, and agricultural security. And I have several questions on this. First, Poland would like to support security or the European defense as a complementary factor in relation to NATO. Are you expecting any coordination of investments in the EU, investments in the defense industry? Are we speaking of the 2% under the NATO umbrella or more? My second question, the US has pulled out of the WHO, the World Health Organization. What is Poland's perspective on collaboration with the US, including military cooperation, if the US decides to pull out from Europe altogether? My third question on defense. How do you wish to convince the 27 member states of the European Union to implement EDIP? Thank you very much. The US has pulled out of the WHO, but now they are reconsidering going back under certain conditions. The next speaker is our guest from Malta, Edward Zamit Lewis.
And turn on your microphone. You will get extra 15 seconds.
Thank you. As Madam Speaker said, we have no time to be weak, and security is definitely a priority. European security is imperative. However, we have to speak more with one voice and more a quick response to events happened around us. We did it with regards to our response to Ukraine. We did it as regards our response to COVID, and we should adopt these models to do them. Again, second point is competitiveness. Competitiveness, as my Cypriot colleague mentioned, it's important and it's tied to European security in the sense that we need good budgets and strong and formidable modes of financing. Third point is with regards to migration. Migration, it's a very important point. We have a migration deal in Europe, but we have a reality around us, and I wish to invite all colleagues that even the southern component of migration, it's a very important aspect, whilst I appreciate the pressures which Poland has as well with regards to external borders. As regards agriculture and health, agriculture is very important. It gives us security, a strategic aspect, and as regards health, we have to work more for common procurement. And to conclude, as the Polish Minister for European Affairs said, in this manner, if we address these things, we can have a strong Europe ready for action in all aspects. Thank you, Mr. President.
Dziękuję bardzo. Następnym głosem będzie pan Dimitris.
And the next speaker is Dimitris Kairidis, Greece.
We are happy to be here in Warsaw, especially in these depressing and distressing times, because I believe if there is a European success story, if there is a success story in European Union and European integration, it is Poland for sure. And the tremendous progress that this country, your country, has made the last 30 years. I am particularly delighted to come to the Poland of Donald Tusk and his recent victory over the illiberal forces of ethno-populism. And so Poland does have the added credibility, both as a country as a whole and as a government in particular, under the wise leadership of a great European statesman, to lead us in these very difficult times. Now, having said that, I should mention that for all the importance of the remarks that we have heard, there is the danger to believe that we live in normal times. I'm afraid there is nothing normal about the times we live, and there is nothing like business as usual. And the sooner we realize, the better. Now, the world does not need another Cassandra foretelling of the bad things coming. What we need the most is the Ulysses, the Odysseus, who will provide solutions by a combination of strength and intelligence. And for that reason, I would focus on defense and the need for a common European defense fund. Both Greece and Poland look eye to eye and on similar terms against the revisionism coming from the East, and I'm afraid even from some corners of the West recently. So very delighted to be here. Thank you very much for your wonderful hospitality, excellent organization of this meeting. And I conclude by suggesting that maybe in our plenary meeting, it might be wise to bring Mr. Draghi as well to speak to us, given the importance of his reform, of his report for reforming our union. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chciałam tylko poinformować, że pan Draghi będzie obecny.
Thank you. I would like to tell you that Mr. Draghi will be present during the European Parliamentary Week in Brussels in mid-February. He has been invited by us to one of the panels dedicated to economic issues. Yes, this is going to be discussed by Troika, but if the representative of Greece mentions Odysseus and Cassandra, then this speaks volumes. Now, Mr. Edmund Chairpersons from Latvia, I give the floor to you.
There's a lot of overlap in what I'm about to say. Indeed, as the Minister mentioned in the introduction, the EU has a strong image as an institution that has managed to preserve peace. But today, peace, democracy, the rule of law needs not only preserving, we need to fight for it, we need to defend it from targeted attacks, both in Ukraine and in the EU. And I thank our Polish friends for highlighting that very clearly in the priorities. To turn to just two actions. First, to avoid the debate about percentages here, we should all agree we are not where we need to be in our investment in defense. And it is a political decision to change that. It is a decision about priorities. Either through joint borrowing or other tools, we need to set that as the political priority very, very soon. Secondly, besides the previous attacks in the Baltic Sea, just yesterday, an optical data cable connecting Latvia and Sweden has been damaged by yet another ship. So in the next sanctions package, we have to severely limit the Russian shadow fleet to defend ourselves, to avoid an environmental catastrophe, and also to make sanctions work as they were supposed to. Thank you very much.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Mr. Pons from Spain, please. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Poland, for this warm reception. I must say I enjoyed Mr. Minister's speech very much. I think I understand him very well. I raised 2 points. As Mr. Draghi said, we only have one alternative. We either grow or die. Security, yes, but security achieved in collaboration, otherwise we will not succeed. Thirdly, about Georgia. Well, be careful with the bad intentions ascribed to countries such as Georgia. We should take care of countries like that. We have a whole new roadmap, technical, authoritarian. Do we want to be part of it? Well, I prefer social Europe much more social Europe. If you read Draghi report attentively, you will understand we are going to lose 2 million persons in the labor market by 2040. We are all in favor of secure frontiers, but we need people to make the European project happen. Thank you. Thank you. Our next speaker is Madam Jasna Vojnic from Croatia.
Thank you. Dear members of Parliament, first of all, I would like to congratulate Poland on taking over the presidency. As a member of Croatian Parliament, I look forward to participating in this dialogue. I am pleased that the topic of the Western Balkans joining the European Union is becoming more and more common for the stability and prosperity of Europe. And I believe that strengthening ties with the region will be a priority in the future. However, the situation in Serbia is worrying. We are witnessing an increase in social unrest and student protests, demanding accountability for media freedom and the rule of law. Unfortunately, a narrative is spreading that unfairly accuses Croatia of being the cause of these protests, which is unfounded and harmful to relations in the region. I call on us to work to strengthen European values and prevent the return of destructive rhetoric on the 1990s. Our responsibility is to support freedom, democracy, and the rule of law, and to build a common European space without division. Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Madame Caroline van der Plas from the Netherlands.
And I will start with expressing my appreciation on the 7 stated priorities during the Polish presidency. And also many thanks on behalf of the Dutch delegation for the great organization and warm welcome last night with a wonderful concert and dinner. So I will say Poland 12 points, Polonia 12 points. And also thanks to the Minister for European Affairs for his statement where he gave Europe its own slogan. We all know that Trump is using MAGA, Make America Great Again, but we now have Mesra, Make Europe Strong and Ready for Action. And Mesra also means cordial in Sanskrit. So thank you for that, dear Minister. The longer the war in Ukraine lasts, the more we hear people asking questions about funding billions of euros in supporting Ukraine, as well as investments in defense. And support is much needed. So how will the Polish presidency act on keeping support from our European citizens for keeping our borders safe, since many people also now have great worries about their own livelihood security? And I would like to have an answer to that, because it's very important to keep our borders safe and to keep Europe safe. Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker, Mr. Pepe Tali from Estonia.
Distinguished colleagues, the focus of the Polish EU presidency on European security is undoubtedly also Estonia's focus. However, Poland has drawn up an ambitious program for its presidency because the current security situation requires it, and Estonia is doing everything it can to support Poland in implementing this ambitious program. I recommend everyone to read the recent report by former Finnish President Sauli Niinistö. President Niinistö advises how to strengthen European civilian and military preparedness and readiness. And from our perspective, it is much more relevant and crucial than the reports of Letta and Draghi combined, because Russia, together with its authoritarian allies, is waging war against us. And we think that the next MFF must contribute significantly more to enhance EU defense readiness, and we will have to continue to support Ukraine. Defense of Brussels and Dublin and Valletta begins from the Narva River. Russia war in Ukraine and Russia hybrid war concern us all, and we have to stick together, and we have to be more decisive because winter is coming.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much. President Niinisto will most probably be invited to our meeting in June. Mr. Dimit Gardev from Bulgaria, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair Grodzki. Dear colleagues, I would like to congratulate the Polish presidency to put this very important and critical for EU issues such as defense, security and energy transition. I want to underline that the US defense policy is essential for ensuring the security and stability in the Union and an uncertain global landscape. But as our distinguished guests from European Parliament already said, it is very important to understand how to find the money about this new defense policy. And this new defense policy must be developed jointly with the cohesion policy, which is a part of critical role in reducing disparities across the member states. I'd like to also welcome the commitment of presidency for underlying the enlargement process, particularly in regards of Western Balkans. Bulgaria has consistently supported EU enlargement and believe it is vital for stability and prosperity in the region. We remain committed to the principles and values of European idea. We will not impose the new conditions in our neighborhoods, but expect sincerely dialogue and mutual respect. Only in this way we can transform the Balkans into prosperous regions, and thank you again from the Polish presidency to contribute to this process.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much. We are glad to hear that Bulgaria is now a member of the Schengen area. And now, Milena Fortuna from Romania.
Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, allow me to thank the Polish presidency for welcoming us here today. We fully agree that the European security in all its dimensions, external, internal, information, economic, energy, food and health, must play a central role. I would like to reflect on 4 issues related to our European security. First of all, connecting the war waged by Russia against Ukraine, I want to stress the importance of enhancing and improving support to the latter country using all available tools. Military support remains vital for countering the Russian aggression, while the political support is essential for keeping Ukraine on a Western democratic course and also for providing a strong position before potential peace negotiations. Discussions about Ukraine will include its supportive neighbors, key to its security and reconstruction. Romania will continue to offer long-term support, and including during reconstruction. Secondly, the broader regional impact of the war in Ukraine must be fully considered, particularly in the case of the Republic of Moldova. The current energy crisis, or energy blackmail, is the most serious challenge brought by Russia to the Republic of Moldova. Romania fully supports the Republic of Moldova by providing both natural gas and electricity. Thirdly, we must better utilize EU instruments to counter increasingly aggressive hybrid activities that undermine democracy, erode trust in institutions, and manipulate public opinion during elections. Finally, on a broader perspective, what we all currently agree is that we need to spend better in building up a genuine European defense sector. We fully agree, together with the Polish presidency, that a discussion on the ways of funding the defense sector within the European Union is very timely. Therefore, we are waiting for the white paper on the future of European defense, which will be presented by the European Commission. Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo. Następnym mówcą jest pan Henrik Müller.
The next speaker is Henrik Müller of Denmark.
Thank you to Poland for hosting us and also for hosting the presidency for the next half year. We will be looking forward to take over after that period. Thank you for the kind words to Denmark. It's a quite sensitive situation right now. And I think that when we're talking about Greenland, we're going to have ice in our stomach about the approach right now. But of course, I don't think that this is only a question about Denmark and Greenland and US. I think that it's also about how the European Union will act on the threats that we are experiencing about taking lands or raising the taxes to the European countries. So it's a question about the test of the European Union and if we will be able to stand together about the threats that are there. We are saying with a glimpse in the eye that with the friends we have right now, we don't need enemies. And that's quite a challenge, the approach that we experience. And I think that security is not only from one part, but it's from many parts that we are under pressure. And that's why the security agenda, as the Polish have, is so important in this. I think that the next few months and the next year will be very important to see whether we'll be unified. As I said, it's not only a question about Greenland, but it's more a question about how will we act together when we're having threats from the outside. But of course, in this situation, we must not forget, I think, the most important agenda, and that is the threats to Ukraine. Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo za ten
Thank you very much for this important contribution. And the next speaker is Ms. Ivana Klimpusz-Tsindzadze from Ukraine.
Distinguished colleagues, I'm very grateful for this invitation. I am welcoming and congratulating Poland on assuming the presidency, and definitely we are counting very much on your value-based leadership. And I think that the priorities that you have set for the presidency clearly show that you deeply understand the nature of the threat and the need to commonly respond to those threats in Europe. But I think that we also have to agree that response to the aggressive war that is continued by Russia against Ukraine, and that is also ongoing not only by military means but by hybrid means on your territories, requires unity, requires political will, requires courage and common action. And in order to efficiently move on to other aspects of the security, based on that would envisage development, innovation, possibility, competitiveness, I think we all have to invest in peace. And we Ukrainians are very much interested in peace, but nevertheless, we have to understand that we are looking for just, sustainable, and lasting peace. And it seems that it's not around the corner. And that means that our common security has to be protected by common defense spending, by common defense procurement, by common defense production. I think also by common sanctioning of the Russian Federation, and we are watching very attentively how this is being discussed right now in Brussels by foreign ministers, and some countries, unfortunately, are not ready for that unity. And also, I think that you have to do much more with your law enforcement and with your security forces, making sure that you are preventing all the security threats inside European countries and all the intrusion that you are experiencing at this point. Be vigilant and be much more courageous about that. Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much. This struggle you are fighting for your own freedom and for ours. And this is something we have to always remember. The next speaker is Mr. Jovan Subotic from Montenegro.
Congratulations to Poland on taking over the presidency. Congratulations on this priority that is sort of a result of a geopolitical situation at this point. When it comes to security, us from Montenegro, from south, from this small country, we tend to think of the philosophical concepts of security in Europe being connected to concepts of peace, concepts of freedom, not with concepts of aggression or war. Security as such is the basis for all the relationship, even between two people, let alone between two countries or more countries. It's based on trust. And here, as a member and as a representative of a country that would like to think that it's well on its way to joining this wonderful family of EU, I'm here to send a message of trust, the message that we trust EU and we hope that EU trusts us. And I'm sending a message of full compliance with the common foreign and security policy of the European Union. In this sense, Montenegro has demonstrated last year that passing through interim benchmark assessment report that we have the minimum when it comes to freedom, justice and security, but also our reports show that we have the modest to good progress. What I'm here to promise and what we tend to do and we want to do is to get good progress in the next report, and Montenegro taking the next step towards joining this wonderful family. Our tasks is to improve this progress, to speed it up, and do whatever is necessary to contribute to the common security of the European Union. Thank you so much.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Burhan Kayatürk from Turkey.
Mr. Chair, dear colleagues, congratulations to Poland on taking over the presidency of the Council of EU for the second time. The Polish presidency comes at a time when the international system is facing strong challenges that demand our collective attention and action. After the COVID-19 pandemic, the war in Ukraine and the war in Gaza, and now the collapse of the regime in Syria have changed the geopolitics of European neighborhood, both in East and South. Such changes need fresh approach that defines European security in broader sense. As clearly stated in the Polish presidency program as well, a strong EU in defense and security can only be achieved through close and effective cooperation with key partners. Turkey is one of the key partners of the EU in this new European security environment, not only being a member of NATO for 7 decades, but also having second largest army of NATO, an extensive military experience, and highly advanced defense industry. Turkey is an important security provider of Europe in broader sense of security, from supply chains to energy, from food security to illegal migration. Finally, I would like to express my hope that Polish presidency will be successful and achieve its goals. Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Akos Ujheli, Serbia.
Thank the Parliament of the Republic of Poland for organization of this event. Each EU presidency set different priorities, starting from the current situation in which the European continent found itself. Poland defined as the priorities of its presidency in the most correct way and in accordance with the current international circumstances. In this sense, I would like to add that the enlargement policy is equally important and should not be neglected and should be evaluated based on the individual progress of each candidate country for EU membership. Serbia is solidly on the path to European integration and will continue with reform. In December of last year, all EU members agreed that Serbia met the condition for opening Cluster 3, which refers to competitiveness and inclusive growth, which means that at the end of February, the procedural possibilities for opening the mentioned cluster will be met. Serbia is also working on Cluster 2 and Cluster 5. In this light, I would like to take this opportunity to express the hope that Poland, as the best example of EU enlargement success story, who plays a key role in further evaluation of idea of European cooperation, will give significant contribution during its presidency in supporting further EU enlargement as a crucial quality and as a part of the idea of the EU identity. Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo. Następny.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Ms. Ina Koseru of Moldova.
Allow me to extend congratulations to Poland on taking over the EU presidency, and we welcome the ambition, plan and priorities of the Polish presidency in the first semester of 2025, with a focus on security, economic competitiveness and combating the hybrid threats in the European Union. In Moldova, we know how important it is to enhance security and combat hybrid threats. The referendum on EU integration organized in autumn last year was supported by Moldovans, and Maia Sandu was re-elected as the president to continue the EU integration of Moldova. This happened in the conditions of unprecedented amount of financial resources of hundreds of millions of dollars mobilized by Russia to bribe the votes and destabilize the political situation in our country. Transnistria crisis aggravated since the 1st of January 2025, since gas from Russia does not come to Transnistria region anymore. People live in cold and in the dark during winter there. Protests started, and security in the region is under danger. We look forward for common solutions for this situation, which can be an additional threat in the region. And we should stay united and continue to support Ukraine to enhance security in Europe. And we hope that under Poland's presidency, we will be able to open the first clusters for negotiations with Moldova. And we appreciate the unwavering commitment from the EU member states to support our EU accession process and all the support offered to Moldova to resist, especially during the last years. And thank you, Poland, for warm welcome and hospitality. Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo. Proszę pozdrowić.
Thank you very much. Please give our greetings to your president, Maia Sandu. She's been very courageous in defense of Moldova and aspires Europe at large. The next speaker is Igor Zdravkovski, North Macedonia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great privilege to address you today regarding the priorities in the Polish presidency in the parliamentary dimensions. Poland takes over the European Union presidency at the specific time with a number of challenges ahead, and that is precisely why the approach and priorities that will be promoted in the coming period are so important. Namely, during Hungary presidency in the European Union, Hungary should to make Europe great again, while Poland during the presidency will focus mainly on the making Europe safer. I would like to use this opportunity to appeal to Poland and European Union member states to stay focused on enlargement of European Union, especially for the countries of Western Balkans, including my country, Macedonia. Europe will be more successful, safer and more advanced only if it is complete and if all European countries contribute to creating stronger and safer Europe. Republic of Macedonia has had candidate status for European Union membership since 2005. This means we had been in European Union waiting room full 2 decades. However, we will continue to believe in the idea of united Europe and in our future as European member state. You look so far, but you forgot your fundaments and principles from Lisbon that Europe is based off. Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo. Ten czas jest długi, ale...
Well, thank you very much. This time has indeed been long, but the Danish presidency will be focused on, among other things, enlargement issues, as we had a chance to discuss at Troika. Now, Mr. Krešnik Čolaku from Albania.
Thank you so much. Let me congratulate also this Polish presidency and the minister, but getting to the point, the key word, I believe, it is for Europe, for all of us, security. You have been hearing me many times asking you to keep on focus on EU enlargement. I came from Albania, Western Balkans countries area, and we feel like in the middle of two ways. One way, our efforts to become member of the Union, one front, and the other one is fighting and trying to resist Russian influences in every of our countries. We feel it in the ground. Look at see Podgorica, or Belgrade, or Pristina, or Bańska, or Skopje, or Bosnia-Herzegovina. We feel it there, and we are fighting it in our own ways. So for us now, when I've said that for us being member of the Union is not only matter of standards but matter of security, think of Ukraine. If Ukraine had been member of the Union, none of this would have happened. I'm sure of it. And now we are concerned what will be the future for this issue. This so-called peace with Putin will be a diplomatic way to claim to declare the capitulation of Ukraine or our defeat, and this model of changing borders by invading other country will be a model of peace. If it is so, if you allow so, you will see in other moments Russia do the very same thing in other areas. I'm very much afraid even in Western Balkan countries. So for us, being member of the Union, of course, is a based merit process, but also it's a matter of security. Thank you so much.
Dziękuję bardzo. W tej chwili poproszę...
Thank you very much. Lord Peter Ricketts from the United Kingdom, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and it's a privilege to be in Poland on Holocaust Memorial Day, a day when many of our heads of state, including King Charles, are marking the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. It couldn't be a more powerful reminder of why all our countries have to work together to defend our security and our freedom. And I welcome that a top priority for the Polish presidency is European defence, including cooperation with third countries like the UK. That means making the most of all our collective strengths. We're facing the third year of Russian aggression in Ukraine and increasing evidence, including in the Baltic Sea, that Russia sees itself at war with Europe as a whole. The UK armed forces are active in supporting allies in the EU and, of course, Ukraine. If we are going to be strong and effective in an unpredictable world, we need to expand, of course, European defence industrial capacity, missiles, and ammunition and equipment. The UK has a large defence industry. I ask EU members and the Brussels institutions to recognise that the current third-party rules are a real obstacle to efficient defence industrial cooperation, and I don't think they respond to the current priorities, and I do hope the reset of UK-EU relations can reduce those obstacles. Thank you very much.
Dziękuję bardzo. Obecność króla.
Thank you very much. The presence of King Charles in Poland today is very important indeed to us as well. And our last speaker in this debate is Mr. Christian Tybing-Gjedde from Norway, please.
I think the microphone is on, or?
Now it's on.
Okay.
I can hear myself now. Well, I would like to start by thanking our Polish host for their hospitality and a lovely dinner and entertainment last night. Poland has a very ambitious program for the EU presidency. The priorities are also very important, spanning from border control to health security. I am particularly pleased that defense and security is priority number one. Europe must take more responsibility in this area, both to support Ukraine and for our own security. NATO is and will continue to be the cornerstone of our defense. Anything the EU initiative should be complementary to NATO. The future will be dominated by artificial intelligence. I will point out that Norway, due to its geographic location and abundance of energy, stands ready to take a leading role on IA in Europe. Nobody has failed to notice that it's a new president in office in the United States. I think it will benefit European interests to engage with the new administration on concrete issues and not to spend time and energy on commenting on the many moves and tweets that undoubtedly will come from the president. I would also like to welcome what President Trump wrote on Truth Social, that he will impose even tougher sanctions on Russia if Putin is not willing to negotiate with Zelensky. The EU and the EEA and EFTA countries concluded agreements on financial mechanism for 2021-2028, as well as bilateral protocol for trade in fish. These agreements are important to strengthen our cooperation and the beneficiary countries and donor countries. I trust that the European Parliament will ratify the agreements as soon as possible. Thank you very much for your attention.
Dziękuję bardzo. Dziękuję bardzo za...
Thank you very much. Well, thank you all for the very inspiring discussion. Minister Szłapka, to the best of my knowledge, needs to catch his plane to Brussels, but I think we still have some time for him to answer a few questions, the key ones in particular. Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, the plane is not going to wait for me, and out of respect for your time as well, I'll be very brief. Well, thank you very much for the discussion we've just had. I would like to thank our presidency trio, Cyprus and Denmark, for the excellent cooperation in preparing our agenda. We had complete collaboration. Yes, security is our key priority, but we cannot think only in terms of one semester. This is an investment we are making for the months and indeed years to follow. Now, talking about security, first and foremost, we must bear in mind two concepts. One is unity and accountability. We must grow up as Europe. We must take upon our shoulders responsibility. No more outsourcing. But for this to happen, we must stand united. United, we are much stronger. Therefore, this discussion is extremely valuable to me. I took a few minutes to talk you through our priorities, and you, with your contributions, added on a number of topics that provide the content for these. EDIP, reinforcing our defense industry. A shared responsibility and joint solutions in the Baltic Sea against the sabotage and infrastructure. Cohesion policy was mentioned. Defense expenditures were raised as well. Now, all these topics are certainly component parts of our shared defense. We understand what the tasks and responsibilities of the presidency are. One, it is to prepare platform for discussion, but it is the agenda that matters, and it is consulted with all of you, and our role is to work out compromise. And this is exactly what we are going to be doing. EDIP and cohesion policy and EPF, which was also raised in one of the questions, as well as support for Ukraine. Thank you very much. We stand ready to shoulder the responsibility for these activities, but for us to be stronger, we need to stand united, and I can see, hearing discussion today, that Europe is ready for this unity. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Minister. I think we will have a chance to meet during the Polish presidency. And now let me announce solemnly that we have just reached the end of the first session and will now take our coffee break. We'll resume the session here at the plenary session at 11:30. Thank you very much.
Skoro zostało to zniesione, to już musiało być.
Myślę, że tak. Śmiesznie mi przed to mnie było tak.
Działa? Ale nie, ja mówię, ale...
Włączone jest.
Nie działa. O, teraz. Now, please take your seats, because we want to start. Witam wszystkich Państwa po przerwie.
Welcome back after the break. I hope we're all ready to launch the second session of this meeting on a policy-based budget of the EU, responsibly tackling the consequences of climate change. Mr. Janusz Lewandowski, Vice Chair of the Committee on Budgets of the European Parliament, former Commissioner for Budget and Financial Programming in 2010-2014, will now take the floor.
Welcome back. Good to see my friends from the European Parliament in these premises. I am sure that our debate over the budget responding to the consequences of climate change is timely and well placed. Timely because we experience really growing intensity of various natural disasters, never-ending succession of catastrophes. Quite recently, hurricane hitting UK and Ireland, and ongoing fires in California, seen previously as a paradise on our planet. In October, floods in Valencia. And this is not the end, I am afraid. This is also a good place as Poland is slowly recovering from the terrible floods in southwestern part of our country. Many dams collapsed, rivers overflowed, thousands of people really affected by these floods, and you should be blind not to see connection with the changes in the climate, as this is really disruptive for the normal water cycles, normal rainfall patterns. And I have no good news for Central Europe that is so much represented here in this room, as the European Environmental Agency is declaring that the heavy rainfall in this part of Europe should be more frequent. Therefore, also the risk of floods is also growing. Therefore, this is our imperative, our must, to equip Europe with tools dealing with consequences of these disasters. By the way, coming with assistance to every corner of Europe is, I think, the most human-friendly phase of European budget. That is why it is also recommended. And of course, this is all based on assumption that our action from the European level is supplementary and not replacing action by member states. The main responsibility remains with member states. Why I am strongly advocating more in this respect in the European budget, I am also aware that we have started preparations for the vision of European finance post-2027. And this is a job of Piotr Serafin, Commissioner for Budgets. He was member of my cabinet when I was designing a multi-annual framework. This is never business as usual. In my time, this was financial crisis for savings in member states, but also presence of strong pressure of Prime Minister Cameron, who was pressing to reduce budget, thinking about his unhappy Brexit referendum. Now we have a lot of challenges, and this is almost my duty to place tools tackling with natural catastrophe in this wider context of what is now on agenda and what is most pressing. One of the issues has been already mentioned. That is, we have defense commissioner without money. And the gap of around 500 billion euro has been detected in order to build real military industry in Europe. No hope for this amount of money in the present financial framework. So the hope is really to place it as a priority for the post-2027 budget. Of course, Serafin, as a commissioner, is now under the pressure from President von der Leyen. She would like to, this is in his mission letter, she would like to change, to transform cohesion on the model of RRF, Recovery and Resilience Fund, that is one centralized fund for every country, delivering money after meeting milestones and reforms. I am not a big fan of this transformation. I think cohesion is value in itself. It's really upgrading many of our countries. If Lithuania and Poland is growing since 2004 from the level of 40% of GDP to 80% of average of European Union, that means real progress, and this is partly thanks to cohesion. Of course, we should prepare for enlargement. This for me, frankly speaking, to our friends from Ukraine, this is not likely to have full presence of Ukraine, Moldova, and the other and Western Balkans very soon. But we should be ready for assistance. We should be ready for pre-accession funds, and this is one more headache of our Polish commissioner. His main, I think, problem is that we should start to repay huge new generation EU. That is a huge borrowing in the markets to recover for the recovery of post-pandemic Europe. This is at least 421 billion euro of grants to be repaid, and we should start repaying 2028 until 2058. So this is about principles. Now our problem is with interest rates due to inflationary pressure last year. The interest rates are very much higher than assumed. So that is why I am placing the tools we have for dealing with natural catastrophes and this wider picture of the overall budget, because right now this is under preparation by Commissioner Serafin. And to give you proportions, all the tools dealing with natural catastrophes, I have to mention them. This is the most boring part of my presentation, coming soon. That is around 30 billion euro, but this is in the budget, in MFF, multi-annual framework, amounting to 1.2 trillion euro. So here are the proportions between our tools for fighting consequences of climate change and the overall budget of the European Union, still in 2/3 built on cohesion and common agricultural policy. But we really need more flexibility. I am advocating for more flexibility because our environment internationally is less predictable than when I was designing my budget for Europe. This is much more unpredictable, therefore we should reinforce our flexibilities in this budget. What is important, the repertoire of natural disasters is really very large. This is about floods, this is about hurricanes, fires, earthquakes, but don't forget also very dangerous oil spills. That is also a part of a natural catastrophe affecting many people. So what we need also in the budget is prevention, that is resilience before it happens. That means also building physical infrastructure, construction of dams against floods, not placing new housing in the areas that are likely to be flooded. So this is about prevention as for the physical infrastructure. We should have much better non-physical infrastructure, that is early warning systems, risk awareness among our citizens. And as for fighting climate consequences of climate change, I think they are very much addressed already in the RRF, in the so-called national, in our country, this is called Krajowy Plan Odbudowy, that is 40% should be devoted to green investment, that is somehow also coping with the consequences of the climate change. But we have also precise special instruments in the budget to deal with natural catastrophes. This is the Union Civil Protection Mechanism that is placed in two places in the budget, in heading 3, that is heading on security and citizenship. This is internally oriented to coordinate action of member states in this area of civil protection, but also in heading 4, Global Europe, oriented towards our environment outside the European Union. We have emergency aid reserve for action outside the European Union, but since 2002, it has been merged with the European Union Solidarity Fund. Now it is called Solidarity and Emergency Aid Reserve. The Union Solidarity Fund was activated on many occasions to deal also in Poland, to deal with the consequences of a natural catastrophe for restoration of infrastructure, and proved to be very useful. We have new Restore package, that is declaration of the European Union from 21 October last year, 2024, allowing member states to use part of their cohesion money for rebuilding infrastructure for all these aims, goals that are connected with natural catastrophe. There is a quarrel whether co-financing should be 100%. Now this is 95% from the European budget. There is another quarrel of how much pre-financing, which has been reduced from 30% to 25%. So here is the panorama of our tools, still rather modest tools to cope with the consequences of natural catastrophe and with prevention. But I am sure, and this is going to be a part of a resolution of the European Parliament, that we should demand more in volume and more in quality also. We should also, of course, I do believe that there is a lot of creativity in the European Commission, pre-financing, transfers, reprogramming, reprioritization. So they are really creative in finding tools beyond what I have mentioned. But generally, what is under criticism is a very lengthy process of coming with assistance via Union Solidarity Fund. That is also, people are also unhappy of mixing both emergency aid reserve and European Solidarity Fund. For me, also emergencies in health should be somehow separated as a separate tool, but this is now in one instrument I have mentioned. But what is criticized is really lengthy process of adoption of assistance. A member state has 12 weeks to apply. Then it is going under evaluation of European Commission, then going for consent in the European Parliament and in the Council. On average, this is 1 year since application to real assistance, and this is absolutely not good for so-called emergencies. There are the other proposals on the table. Let's hope that they are to materialize, but my aim today was really to place all the instruments. Oh, for example, I would be in favor of a principle of build better back. That is, if you are rebuilding something after natural disaster, it should be built as an earthquake, for example, resistant building, and not placed on the areas of danger of flooding. So build better, rebuild better is a nice principle for eligibility of the financial assistance from the European Union level. But really, what is now at stake is future of European finances. This is a much broader picture than the tools dealing with natural catastrophes. So I would like to learn from you now in our discussion, and this is the end of my story. Thank you for attention. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Budget is always a difficult topic. I cannot remember a single case where it wouldn't be. But, well, all the more reason for me to thank you, Commissioner, for a succinct introduction to this topic. Well, allow me to remind you that the speakers will take the floor in the order presented on the screen, and we have 26 speakers registered to take the floor. We speak from the seat by pressing the button on the console, and each speaker has maximum 2 minutes, and 1.5 minute will flash up on the screen. It's a preferred option, the 1.5 minute time slot. Mr. Zoltán Tesszely will speak as first, Hungary. Mr. Commissioner, Madam, Mr. Chair, well, in terms of climate, we have made a number of commitments in the EU. About 40% of the Hungarian recovery plan passed by the European Commission and the Council serves the purpose of green transition. Well, it could at least. The next generation loan was drawn by 27 member states, and until 2025, Hungary will carry an additional obligation because of increased interest on the loan. Hungary has not yet received access to this instrument, even though it is coming to completion in 2026. Despite that, last year we increased the share of renewable energy in our energy mix to 25%, and the solar energy accounts for 20%, which puts us amongst the leaders in 2024. Our nuclear plant will account for 37% of the total production of energy. That's 47%. Almost 1/3 of Ukraine demand for electricity comes from Hungary. We can also help Slovakia to support their needs. Thank you. Mr. Sven Simon from the European Parliament, please.
I would also like to take this opportunity to express my gratitude to the Polish presidency for perfectly organizing this conference. Wonderful dinner yesterday and providing us with this platform where we can exchange our views. Over the past years, the EU has implemented a wide range of regulations and directives to tackle climate change. Some of these measures have demanded significant sacrifice from our industries, with ever-tightening regulations driving up production costs. Yet despite all the efforts, we must be honest and acknowledge that these measures will not stop or even significantly slow the progression of climate change. And this raises the question, what can we as Europeans realistically achieve? Are our policies making a meaningful global impact, or are they merely leading to the outsourcing of emission-intensive production to other regions? Besides reducing carbon emissions and maybe even filtering them out of the environment through innovation and technology, and I think here should be the focus also when we speak about funding, we must indeed discuss how to tackle the consequences of climate change and ask ourselves what the EU's role is to address these challenges. We should also discuss coordination at a higher international level, ensuring that global action is taken rather than unilateral measures that disadvantage our continent and from an outside perspective sometimes seem to be protectionist. I look forward to hearing your perspectives during this debate and how we can drive a climate policy that is both impactful and realistic, and I pretty much like what our colleague from the European Parliament said before. Thank you very much.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker, Mr. Jacek Włosowicz from Poland. Thank you very much, Chair, ladies and gentlemen. Well, allow me to thank you first for your warm words addressed to the Polish presidency upon the organization of the meeting today and yesterday, last night. These words should really go to our colleagues from the House of Senate. I'm sure they're very pleased to hear that. Now, as politicians, as representatives of the government, we are very happy to hear your assessment of Polish priorities. Indeed, there are many challenges in Europe. Some of them are major problems. And our focus on security seems to be shared by the colleagues present here. Now, in terms of external security, we differed in opinion over the past months. Now we speak almost one voice. Now, internal security, we all agree. The natural disasters do not know state boundaries, and this is something we must factor in, and we agree on that. But there is the issue of financing. Financing by the EU, repayment of the obligations drawn in the beginning of this term. Well, I hope that this shared opinion on tackling natural disasters will prove effective in prevention and in combating them when they do happen. Thank you very much. Our next speaker, Mr. Peter de Rova of Belgium.
Dear colleagues, it is to be welcomed that the Polish presidency wants to encourage the agricultural sector in adopting climate-resilient measurements that prevent or combat risks such as floods and droughts. The previous resolution adopted by the COSAC plenary in Budapest underlined that recent natural disasters highlight the need for the EU to be better prepared to respond to such disasters, and that cooperation between EU countries' crisis centres is essential to deal with a wide range of potential risks and crises. Let further development of cooperation between the national crisis centres of EU member states be a priority to the Polish presidency. The use of nuclear power should also be, I think, an important element in this issue. The EU Solidarity Fund supporting regions hit by major disasters is a useful and necessary emergency instrument. If additional resources are used for this under the future multi-annual financial framework, this discussion, which will be a difficult one, would also be best accompanied by the development of a sustainable agriculture and reform of the current agricultural and cohesion policies that take up more than 2/3 of the European budget. Thank you very much.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Mr. Anton Hofreiter from Germany.
Thanks a lot, and thanks a lot, Mr. Lewandowski, what he has explained to us. I think it's very important that we become better by tackling the consequences of the climate change. We also need a lot of more money, but we also have to realize that we not only can tackle the consequences of the climate change, but that we have to do more to stop climate change. Because we already see what happens now, when the world is on average 1.5 warmer than before. And that's not the end of climate change. When there's more carbon dioxide in atmosphere, we can end up in a world which is 2 or even 3 degrees warmer in average. And then we have consequences which is nearly impossible to tackle. So I think we have to do both. We have to stop the climate crisis to become worse, and we have to deal with the consequences. Because if it becomes even worse and worse, we will be not possible to deal anymore, even if we invest much more money. And it's already the case that to prevent climate crisis is just you need much less money than to tackle the consequences. To tackle the consequences, you need 6 times more money as for prevention.
Thank you very much. And now, Madam Caroline van der Plas from the Netherlands, please.
Thank you. The first 3 essential needs for people are oxygen, water, and food. And the EU has always had a strong community of professional food makers, which are called farmers. And just a few % of our population produce and provide our food. Without our farmers, no one in this room could function, because no one can survive on only oxygen and water. We have much challenges on keeping food security and being less dependent on food imports from countries who produce less sustainable than our own European farmers. And the climate is not helped by less sustainable farmers, but farmers also have challenges with more extreme weather conditions like droughts or excessive rain, and as you have endured recently, floodings, leading to crop failure. It is vital that the EU has its own strategy stocks in order, and among this is food. And how will the Polish presidency make sure that the EU support farmers in producing even more sustainable than they already do, in a manner that they can compete internationally, so that the EU will not be dependent on more and more imports from countries that are not meeting our high standards? And question 2, what will the Polish presidency do to enhance and invest in better water management? Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo. To jest niezwykle ważne, żeby...
Thank you very much. Indeed, food security is extremely important to be provided for. This is indeed one of the priorities of the Polish presidency. Mr. Giulio Terzi di Sant'Agata from Italy.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to support fully what Commissioner Lewandowski said, especially as regards emergencies. Italy has a lot of experience. We know how important it is to stand united and to respond to climate change, environmental emergencies in a solidary way within the EU, while being solidary with our partners, neighbors, and countries that are overseas. The key topic raised by the Commissioner is flexibility. Flexibility of the next multi-annual financial framework, the new instruments proposed, and the instruments that we have at hand under the current MFF. The crises that we are all faced with make it clear that we need to ensure security, to protect our democracy and freedom. This is why we have the European Defence Facility and financial resources to finance our investments in defense. As regards the green transition, we must rely on cohesion, social, industrial, and otherwise. Green transition cannot result in deforestation in our industry, in that electric cars will be imported from overseas. Thank you very much. The next speaker is Ms. Jelena Miloš, Croatia.
Dear colleagues, given the alarming pace of climate change, I fully agree that faster and more flexible use of EU funds, especially in response to natural disasters, is well needed, because these natural disasters, floods, violent storms, wildfires, we have them in all countries, and we have them also in my country as well. But I do not think that we are all equally responsible when we discuss climate change. And therefore, I would like to welcome the Polish presidency's focus on combating climate disinformation. I think that the climate disinformation on social media is extremely harmful and poses right now a significant threat to both the safety and security of our citizens, but it also poses significant obstacles for European and national policymakers to swiftly implement climate policies and effectively combat climate change. Therefore, as I said before, I welcome all decisive action to counter the spread of climate disinformation, but I would especially like to hear more details on the specific measures the EU plans to undertake in this regard. Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo. Następny w kolejności.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Francisco José Conde, Spain. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Desde la perspectiva del Pacto Verde, el informe.
The Green New Deal creates a new context for our work as regards climate change and its impact on the economy, which is a big challenge. We have to change our approach. We must ensure compatibility so our industries are competitive. This requires significant investments. We must achieve a circular economy, and I am happy to hear that you are speaking about Europe of regions, which is very important when it comes to flexibility that is necessary for Europe to grow faster. I should mention the floods that have affected Spain, especially this region of Valencia. The Solidarity Fund is of key importance. We have to learn the lessons and understand that flexibility is of key importance. We must be capable to respond to emergencies immediately. And we have to take account of governance at regional level by the regional governments. The European Commission should listen to the opinions of regional governments in the case of natural disasters. Thank you. Thank you very much. The next speaker is Heikki Autto, Finland.
Thank you, Honorable Chair and dear friends. What comes to the multi-annual funding framework for the coming years, the security of Europe has to be the main priority. That means more focus on defense spending, a lot more. The second most important priority has to be the competitiveness. These two priorities have to be the main focus of the multi-annual funding framework. Member of the European Parliament, Sven Simon, spoke very well, so I don't repeat what he said. But I just want to underline the fact that in Europe we have been able to cut our emissions. we cause only 7% of the global emissions anymore. We just need to get all the others to follow our example. And how do we get others to follow? We need to be competitive and economically successful. As the most competitive continent, we can be again also the most prosperous continent. And that way we can truly be the beacon of hope for the world to tackle difficult questions like the climate change, but also we can be the beacon of hope for democracy, rule of law, basic human rights, and sustainable development in all of its aspects.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Jean-François Rapin, France. Chairwoman, the intensity of natural disasters requires the European Union to offer assistance to the affected regions. Civil defense mechanisms offer assistance to countries, but European funding is not mobilized fast enough. Our procedures are too complex. Peripheral regions are unable to use those mechanisms, even though they are at great risk. We have to reinforce civil defense mechanisms. For instance, last December, the Restore regulation was published to mobilize resources from the European funds better. Mayotte, the French region in the Indian Ocean, was affected by a cyclone every December, and we have to implement the restore mechanism there as soon as possible. The European Union must implement policies adapting us to climate change. We can see an increase of resources in the current budget, and we have to continue that way to ensure that those policies are properly implemented in the field. This is why we need to work closely with the member state to mobilize all the European instruments that are close to the citizens. Thank you. Thank you very much. And now, Jan Ferenczak, Slovakia. So, the next speaker is Pere Juan Pons, Spain. My first comment is about combating climate change. We should take a broader perspective geographically. We must always have those in mind. Second, if we only look at, well, if the transition is not fully democratic, some people may be buying electric cars, others will be unable to pay the electricity bill. This will take us nowhere. This is no way towards security or safety. We must first of all ensure environmental security. Without environmental security, we cannot think of any other kind of security. We need to cut our greenhouse gas emissions. We have to mobilize funding for the expansion of our infrastructure. Look at Brazil. We have a roadmap, but we have to take a broader look. Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Mr. Gardev from Bulgaria.
No? Jeśli nie, to następny w kolejności.
No, then the next speaker is Edward Zamit Lewis, Malta.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In 2004, 11 of EU member states were affected by floods. Not to mention our friend the United Kingdom, which had recent great considerable floods as well. Unfortunately, we have to tackle, as other speakers said, the root of the problem, which is what is causing climate change, and unfortunately as well, we cannot do it alone. The occurrences of natural disasters is causing a great hardship to our citizens, and affected regions require quick response, access to food, material assistance, reconstruction of damaged infrastructure, and not to mention health support. I must say that the European Union responded with true legislation with regards to what is called the Restore regulation. However, I believe this is not enough. And so, to come to what Mr. Lewandowski said in his good intervention, we need more flexibility to counter unpredictability. And so, to answer to the question, for the next financial MFF, the next financial period, I believe that it is very important, it is imperative that the European Union should dedicate part of its budget to the immediate and coordinate response. Thank you very much.
Dziękuję bardzo. Proszę.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Mr. Pierre-Alexandre Anglade. Pierre-Alexandre Anglade, France.
Au moment où le président américain Donald Trump annonce le retrait des États-Unis de l'accord de Paris, nous devons, nous, Européens...
Thank you, Chairman. The US President Donald Trump is saying they will pull out of the Paris Climate Agreement, which is why we must all engage in fighting climate change and global warming. This is our responsibility, considering the situation faced by our peripheral regions, as mentioned by Mr. Rapin. Whatever the US do, we have to steer the course and reduce our emissions. We have to stick to our targets, climate neutrality by 2050. The US and some other member states sometimes speak in the voice of climate denialists. The CRDS, the directive on the automotive industry, we must not yield to these pressures and dismantle all the regulations we have succeeded in issuing. We must not only adopt. First and foremost, we have to invest. We must invest in the new industrial strategy, green technology, innovation, nuclear power, all that favors sovereignty and independence of our citizens and the continent at large. Thank you very much for this important intervention. We mustn't go back to the Middle Ages. That wouldn't work. The next speaker is Mr. Vincent Blondel, Belgium. Thank you, Chair. I've been listening to the interventions of the previous speakers, and everybody has mentioned extreme weather events of different sorts caused by climate change. Indeed, in the upcoming years, the EU should strengthen the existing mechanisms. This is what all the speakers have been saying. A couple of months ago, the climate adaptation in the European Union report has been released by the Environmental Agency, which talks about the difference between the pace of climate change and the pace of adaptation in the EU. The costs of the adaptation have been underestimated. Science and research that the member states use are out of date, and the report says that there is not enough coordination of national, sectoral and regional strategies. The Polish presidency is ready to work, and I'm very happy to know that. And I think we should strengthen and consolidate the existing mechanism of civil protection and solidarity, and all the mechanisms for structural investments under the cohesion policy. the European Court of Auditors report says that our actions are not enough to tackle the challenge we face. And so I'm very happy that Poland is ready to act, and I hope that the next report from the European Court of Auditors is more optimistic. Thank you very much. The next speaker is Matilda Ehrenkrantz, Sweden.
September 27th marks 8 years since the liberation of Auschwitz, and it's also established by the UN as Holocaust Memorial Day. The fight for human dignity is here and now, and we have to take every given opportunity to stand up against anti-Semitism, choose democracy, and the equal value of all people. On the note of equal value of all people, the frequency and intensity of natural disasters in Europe are increasing and alarming. It is not just a trend, it's a reality. And this is why we need to stay steadfast when it comes to the European Green Deal to achieve climate neutrality by 2050. Cut our greenhouse gases, invest in renewable energy, improved energy efficiency, increased carbon capture, emissions trading, cleaner transportation, and support for citizens transitioning to a greener economy. It will bring security for Europe and a safer, human-friendly world for our citizens. Based on the EU social dialogue, this is the future, the competitiveness that Europe are so desperate to achieve. Colleagues, there are no shortcuts and no infinite resources. We need all to do more and better. As we speak, Ukrainian soldiers are defending freedom and democracy. They are fighting not just for their country, but for the security of Europe. We owe it to them, to our children, to ourselves, to act with urgency and responsibility, also when it comes to tackling climate change. It is about security, respect for humanity, and for a livable future worth fighting for. So for our shared future, stay steadfast on climate neutrality by the latest by 2050. Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker, Mr. Rainer Robra from Germany.
I would like to place my intervention in the wider context of the preparation of the next MFF and express some concerns about the important future of cohesion policy. Cohesion policy is the EU's most visible instrument at the regional and local level. It's crucial that decisions on use of funds are made at the regional level, thus reflecting territorial diversity and fostering subsidiarity in practice. The Bundesrat calls for cohesion policy to be continued in all regions. More developed regions and transition regions face more sustainable transformation challenges as well. We firmly reject the idea of just one single plan for each member state. The regional or place-based approach, respectively, multi-level governance, shared funds management, and the partnership principle must be maintained in the future. The German Bundesrat is in favor of retaining a system of regional categories differentiated by development level. Besides, regional economic strength should continue to be the central indicator for all allocation of funds. I want to emphasize that the investment and funding needs will continue to grow and that funding therefore needs to be increased for all funds in order to achieve the long-term objectives of cohesion policy after 2027. While I can understand the urgent need of regions affected by natural disasters, I want to underline the need for a fundamental distinction between cohesion policy and crisis intervention instruments. Both are important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Peter Tali from Estonia.
Thank you, Chairs and distinguished colleagues. Russia, together with its authoritarian allies, is waging war against us. the authoritarian regime doesn't care about climate change, climate challenges, or about environment. We do. However, we have to stop Russia and China with all measures. Firstly, sanctioning Russia and limiting the activities of the shadow fleet. Secondly, protecting critical undersea infrastructure around Europe and between the US, between America and Europe. Thirdly, investing in military mobility infrastructure. Finally, the next MFF must contribute more to enhance our defense readiness. Defense of Brussels and Dublin and Valletta begins from the Narva River. Russia war in Ukraine and Russia hybrid war concerns us all. We must stick together and invest in security and defense. Our ambition must be higher. The EU border countries, Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, have already decided to invest 5% or even more of their GDPs into defense. This is what we Europeans need. It doesn't matter who is the current president of United States. The Kremlin's together with its authoritarian allies understands only brute military force. They consider diplomacy to be weakness. Therefore, we must be decisive. Winter is coming. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Mr. Dimitris Kairidis from Greece.
I want to apologize from the start for diverting from the speech I had prepared and from the subject at hand. I feel, though, obliged to respond to a misstep that I noticed in our previous session by our esteemed honorable colleague from North Macedonia. And I want to say out loud and clear that we had a dispute for 30 years. We reached a painful compromise. My party, now in power in Greece, did not agree to that compromise, but we strongly believe that pacta sunt servanda, and that what we have agreed on needs to be respected at all times and everywhere. And that if not so, the consequences will be dire for everybody involved and for regional stability. Now, my esteemed colleague came from North Macedonia to plead for the speedy and quick accession of his country to EU. And my country has been always very supportive of the Western Balkans' speedy integration into the EU, and I personally have struggled all these years for that. But a main precondition for accession is to be respectful of the treaties, of international treaties, what we have agreed on. So the name of the Republic is North Macedonia, and any attempt to try to sneak out of the agreement does not help the road of North Macedonia, a poor, small nation in the Western Balkans, in its road, legitimate road to EU accession. I felt I wanted to say this out loud and clear and try to put some senses to the new government in Skopje before this spills out of control. The last thing we need is more divisions and polarizations. We already have a lot. I wanted to speak about green transition and the problems we have in the Mediterranean, the region that is most affected by climate change. We are not talking about 1.5 Celsius, we talk about almost 3 Celsius change in the heat, in the water temperature in the Mediterranean. But I don't want to take more of your time. Thank you, and I apologize for this diversion. But
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much. We have no representative of Northern Macedonia with us at the moment, but let's return to the climate topics and budget topics too. Our next speaker, Madam Ivana Klim-Pushtin-Sadze from Ukraine.
Dear colleagues, obviously the European Union has long been a global leader in climate action, and you've set a very clear and ambitious goals by carbon neutrality by 2050, and we fully share those goals. But I also hope that we all understand that reaching those goals requires resources and requires a policy-based budget. And while thinking of that next MFF, I would hope that you will also consider that the war, unfortunately, is also seriously impacting the climate change and is bringing a lot to the natural calamities and disasters that we are facing. So therefore, we would expect that while working on the next MFF, you colleagues of the European Union members will, while prioritizing investments in green infrastructure, renewable energy and climate adaptation, you will also think of the possibilities how to include the efforts of rebuilding Ukraine after the war, offering an opportunity to align those practices and those policies with of recovery efforts with green and sustainable principles. We also hope that you will foresee how to address the socio-economic impacts of the war in that particular next MFF. And thirdly, we hope that all of us will be thinking about the cohesion policies that will ensure that they will be reaching the most vulnerable communities, both within the EU and in the partner countries like Ukraine. We know that Ukraine can be part of the answer and part of the solution in water supply, in food security, in addressing the issues of climate change. So let's work on this all together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Mr. Burhan Kayaturk from Turkey.
Mr. Chair, dear colleagues, the climate crisis is not just an environmental issue, but one of the most pressing challenges of our time with social and economic dimensions. Over the last 40 years, the financial impact of extreme weather and climate-related events has exceeded 487 billion euros across the EU 27. With a 2050 perspective, the European Green Deal is a comprehensive EU response to the dual challenges of climate change and environmental destruction, and its transformative agenda extends far beyond EU borders. Turkey is also strongly committed to the international climate regime, setting a net zero emissions target by 2053 in line with the EU's 2050 target. Turkey, with the huge attention of government and First Lady Madame Erdogan, Turkey has prepared its own plan to implement the European Green Deal with the participation of all relevant stakeholders. Turkey's ratification of the Paris Agreement and announcement of a net zero emission target by 2053 has given additional acceleration to the implementation of our Green Deal action plan. The draft climate law, once enacted, will provide the legal basis for our net zero target. In conclusion, tackling the climate crisis and its consequences there should be an area of cooperation where Turkey and EU must act together. Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Mr. Jovan Subotic, Montenegro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, when we talk about climate change, of course, we talk about an issue that transcends the national borders and quite often is unpredictable. What can we predict with 100% certainty is that catastrophic events will happen. Why do I state these basic and universal truths? In a sense, to focus on the allocating of the funds for prevention and potential crisis management, of course, allocating and directing specifically at those issues that can be at stake. And it goes back to security. It goes back to the first topic, personal security, health security, food security. If you want to talk about agriculture, which was a priority of the previous presidency, the Hungarian presidency, as well as this of Poland, we talk about making farming cool again, like I said in Budapest, or reflecting and making farmers secure again. If we allocate the funds for farmers that can tackle the potential crisis, that's what brings up food security and, in a sense, security of agriculture as a means of production. So let's focus on crisis management and let's focus on economy based on renewable resources. What's needed right now, even from a small country like ours, is to allocate our own funding, international funding, European funding, to focus on an economy that's based on renewable fuels.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Ms. Ina Koseru, the Republic of Moldova.
Indeed, during the last decades, the European Union has been the lead at the global level in combating climate change. Climate change consequences show us every year that we cannot give up on the green agenda. And here I would like to thank the EU countries to support economic growth plan of Moldova with a budget of 1.8 billion euro for 2025-2027 to support economic sector, including energy sector, resilience and adaptation to climate change. Without this assistance, it would be challenging to support economic sector of Moldova, hit strongly by multiple crises during the last years. For the moment, half of the energy needs are produced in Moldova from renewable energy sources, but energy efficiency and energy storage are those actions which need to be further supported to build energy and climate resilience of the country. I express gratitude to Poland for proposing a new calendar to the EU Parliament to approve the growth plan facility for Moldova in March this year. Our common effort will be a part of the communication campaign during the parliamentary elections, which are scheduled for autumn this year. In terms of biggest climate adaptation actions, we are implementing an ambitious program to reforest Moldova with actual 10% of forest coverage and increase it with another 150,000 hectares of forests during the next 10 years. And this year we will finalize the screening process. These are 24 chapters left to be analyzed, very comprehensive with agricultural, environmental, energy, transport chapters to assure a better and more efficient greener transition of Moldova during the next years. So we're looking forward to the expertise and support from the European partners in this way. Thank you very much.
Dziękuję bardzo. W tej chwili
Thank you very much. And the last but one speaker is Ms. Aleksandra Tomic, Serbia.
Climate change policy is a critical aspect of budgeting policy, with the EU aiming for the climate resilience by 2050. The official strategy included the more money, but we heard Mr. Levansky it will be more if necessary, and the EU civil protection mechanism and cohesion policy prevention, while the common agriculture policy allows tools and funding to assist farmers. In 2024, the European Commission adopted 2 proposals of amendments regulation for rapid mobilization for EU fund. The Serbia have the experience of the good cooperation with the EU during the flood of 2014. Serbia proposed last year, and European Commission approves a reform agenda in 4 areas with 98 measures, with a projected budget support of 1.6 billion euros by 2027, part of which will be earmarked for the climate change. Regional cooperation is essential to adapt to these policies. In the adopted 2025 budget of the Republic of Serbia, a green budget has been exactly defined for the first time. It includes 64 projects with a total value of 1 billion euro, of which 6 projects worth 188 million euro are dedicated to the mitigating climate change. In the end, congratulations on the presidency, and we hope for a good results for the region Western Balkan and Republic of Serbia in cooperation with EU in policy of climate change.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much. And the last speaker is Ms. Yalenur Sulu from Turkey.
Dear Mr. Chair and my colleagues, as a member of Turkey's main opposition party, CHP, I would like to thank esteemed representatives of the Polish Parliament for the invitation and the kind hospitality. I also wish the Polish presidency success for the next term. I'm sure that all the colleagues in this hall is aware of how the increasing effects of the climate crisis threaten our future. Despite Trump's withdrawal from the Paris Agreement and the climate deniers, the European Union must strictly adhere to the targets and allocate the necessary budget. EU's leadership in global climate will be more and more vital for building greener and more sustainable future. Achieving the EU's 2030 climate target will require public investment of at least 0.5% of GDP between 2025 and 2030. The green transformation requires significant investments that put climate action at the center of EU spending. In 2014 and 2020 budget period, the EU allocated our 2020 billion to climate initiatives, exceeding the 20% of spending target. Under the current budget framework, the EU finances climate change mitigation and adaptation efforts through a number of programs, including Horizon Europe, the Just Transition Mechanism, the Common Agricultural Policy Adaptation Fund, and the European Regional Development Fund, the LIFE Programme, and InvestEU. As a result, EU budget is a vital instrument in combating climate change and financing adaptation and mitigation efforts while promoting a sustainable and resilient economy. In this far-reaching policy area that goes beyond its borders, the EU needs to take into account not only its members, but also the candidate countries. Measures should be considered to ensure that candidate countries also benefit from the EU's tools and financial mechanism. Of course, candidate countries should also consider how they can contribute to these EU policies and practices. Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much. This was a very important debate, but if it is only Europe tackling climate change, then winds, pollution, sea and air temperatures know no borders, so we have to encourage everyone around the world to take responsibility for the planet. Even if our plans are amended as we go. May I thank all the speakers and invite Mr. Lewandowski to respond to the comments and questions raised in this debate.
Thank you. I promise that after my intervention, I am in a listening mood to learn from you. Therefore, only 3 short points. When proclaimed in 2019, Green Deal was really priority number 1, but then came pandemic, and COVID-19 was really about reduction of emission, because this was about freezing of economy, but then war, and we are under the revaluation of our of Green Deal, not the goal in itself, still valid, that is neutrality by 2050, but more pragmatic means in achieving the goal. That is also the strategy of Polish presidency, more incentives, less punishment. That is our approach to Green Deal. But really, we cannot be alone. Europe is responsible for 6 to 7% of global emission. Trump is withdrawing 13%, that is a share of United States in global emissions. So here is the problem of not being alone, and that is why I like very much new narrative to be now presented that is called Clean Industrial Deal. Clean Industrial Deal, meaning that we want still to save the planet, but we also want to invest in clean industrial jobs in Europe. Second point, even more short, that is Polish presidencies covering a wide range of securities, from military to energy, health security, but also food security, which was mentioned. I don't want to open the Pandora box of Mercosur. I know that there are deep divisions running across Europe, so let us skip it. Skip Mercosur for this day, but really what we want is security in all variety of dimensions. And I am happy to hear, final point, from the biggest net payer, Germany, praise for cohesion, regional cohesion, because cohesion means visibility of Europe in every corner of Europe, even remote countries outside our continent. This is also about regional ownership of cohesion, of spending, and whatever happens in Warsaw, bad or good, they are implementing at the regional level. So this is also about good implementation. The answer to all our limits in budget for future is, of course, flexibility, increased flexibility, and I promise that our position of the European Parliament will be about more flexibility in unpredictable time. But now, after having so much food for thought, real food is waiting for us, and I don't know whether our creative organizers are ready to speed up a little bit food for food. But thank you again for your participation. Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo, panie przewodniczący.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Yes, we are approaching the conclusions. However, let me first share some comments from both these sessions. I'm leaving this room with my head raised high up. After this debate, here and in the wings, I am fully certain that Europe can be a partner to everyone around the world. It will never be a servant or a poor cousin. We have 450 million people plus the UK. We have a GDP comparable to the biggest powers, and so it is up to us, members of parliaments, to take responsibility and to lead Europe to a bright, optimistic future. After this meeting, in anticipation of the upcoming meetings in this presidency, I am positive, because I know that the circumstances, the conditions around the world will mobilize us to make sure that Europe lives up to the challenges of our times. This is something I'm certain of. And I'm also sure that when we stand united and act together, we will achieve a lot. Now let me turn over to co-chair Agnieszka Pomaska.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for the summary. I fully endorse it. Let me invite you to the 73rd session of COSAC, which will take place in Warsaw between the 8th and the 10th of June in the plenary chamber of the House of Sejm. Hopefully, this will also be an opportunity for you to see the entire building of Polish Parliament, and I'm sure we're going to meet each other in the meantime more than once. I would like to encourage you to get in touch with us on an individual basis if need be, and thank you very much for the collaboration thus far. Now, the weather is excellent, and I'm sure it's going to be even better in June. There are a few places nearby, perhaps to see. The Palace of Culture, a very controversial building. You can actually go up to the 30th floor. I've been asked about that. Yes, you can go up there and take in the beauty, the panorama of Warsaw. If you have more time, you can go to the history of the Polish Jews. The day is excellent for that. A very good stay in the afternoon in Warsaw. Thank you very much for being with us at this meeting. Thank you.
I już ostatni komunikat.
And my final communication, our members of staff will take us to a family photo which will take place in the staircase in the same main lobby in anticipation of our meeting in June. Will be hosted in the House of Sejm, the lower chamber. And then we'll go to the Sala Kolumnowa, where buffet lunch will be served, and we'll have an opportunity to continue with our discussion on a more informal footing. Thank you very much, myself and my co-chair, Madam Pomaska. We wish you a bon appetit and a safe journey back home, and see you again in June.